Hey, tonight we're going to the south of France. Too nice. Where the sun melts the streets into a soft, hazy gold. And old men play pétanque under plane trees like they've got all the time in the world. Imagine standing on the Promenade des Anglais, just after the last tourists have gone home. The sea is a sheet of black glass. You hear the distant clink of a wine bottle, the soft whir of a street cleaner, and maybe, just maybe, the faintest sound of digging coming from somewhere deep beneath your feet. Somewhere in a quiet villa in the hills, a man named Albert Spaggiari is smiling at a map. He's not a gangster, he's a photographer. But the camera he's looking through tonight isn't aimed at a wedding party. It's aimed at the floor of the Société Générale bank, and he's about to take a picture no one will ever forget. You probably wouldn't last 5 minutes on his crew, not because of the danger, but because of the incredible, maddening patience you'd have to find inside yourself. So, before we get started, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe if this is your kind of late-night story. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Dim your screen, settle in, and let's tunnel into the heart of this thing together. The photography studio smells faintly of developer fluid and dust. A cheap tabletop fan pushes the warm air around, making the negatives hanging from a line dance like little ghosts. Albert stands by the window, one hand on the iron grate, the other holding a Galois's cigarette he hasn't lit. He doesn't smoke much anymore, but the ritual matters. Nice below him is a slow-moving river of amber light and quiet anticipation. The city, famous for its lazy elegance and sun-drenched beaches, hums with a strange kind of peace. The locals call it la douceur de vivre, the sweetness of living. But Albert knows better. It's not sweet, it's complacent. He's 44 years old, but tonight, under the weight of an idea so perfect it feels like a memory, he feels timeless. The air holds a kind of pressure, like a secret that's about to break. Not loudly, but with that quiet, satisfying click of a safe tumbler falling into place. Behind him, the darkroom door creaks. His associate, a man we'll call Jean-Pierre, leans in. He's tired in a way that settles deep in the bones. "They're here," he says. Albert turns. The unlit cigarette drops into a ceramic ashtray without a sound. Inside, a group of men wait. They're not from Nice, they're from Marseille. Rougher hands, harder eyes. They wear casual shirts, gold chains tucked away, and expressions carefully balanced between professional respect and deep skepticism. They're not here for small talk. They're here to see if this charming photographer is for real. This was Albert Spaggiari, the architect of a plan born from a city blueprint and a deep boredom with ordinary life. He ruled his studio not like an artist, but like a meticulous planner who hated crooked frames and blurry details. He was about to apply that same precision to a bank vault. The silence he's cultivated wraps around the men like a threat. The conversation is brief, whispered. They discuss the sewer system, the thickness of the vault floor, the patrol schedule of the gendarmerie, a missing piece of equipment from a supplier who got spooked. Albert listens more than he speaks. His fingers tap the table, a slow, steady rhythm. His own, we can find the supplier, one of the Marseille men says, his voice a low gravel, or his family. Albert looks up, finally. Neither, he says. We fix the problem, not create new ones. There's a pause, not a challenge. Just the sound of professionals recalculating the odds around a new variable. This photographer doesn't speak like a thug, but his stillness is louder than any threat they've ever heard. It's deliberate, like counting out cash in a room full of people you don't quite trust. After the meeting, Albert walks to the back of the building, past the small garden where his wife grows tomatoes and lavender. A cat sleeps on a warm stone wall. Above them, the stars are brilliant. He climbs a small ladder to the roof. He does this every night. He returns to the place where the wind has no agenda, where the city becomes a map of light, where he can feel the weight of his plan without anyone seeing his shoulders tense. Tonight, though he thinks he sees someone on a distant balcony, watching him through binoculars, or maybe it's just a trick of the light. It doesn't matter. He knows he's being watched. By the police, by rival crews, by the universe itself. When you plan something this big, you become the center of a gravity. Well, he sits on the cool tiles, the city spread before him like a promise. The fan is still turning below. Shadows crawl across the walls of his studio. In the distance, fireworks from a late-night festival pop. Someone's birthday, or someone's celebration of a deal well made. Albert's phone buzzes. A message from a number with no name. The tools are in the river. He deletes it without replying. The sewer entrance is beneath a small, unassuming manhole cover on a quiet street near the waterfront. No sign, no warning, but everyone on the team knows what it is. In 1968, a man from a rival crew tried to use this sewer to escape a police raid. He went in, he never came out. At 12:03 a.m., Albert arrives. The air down below is cool and thick with the smell of damp earth and history. The sewer workers, the only people who know this world, call it La Vente de Nice, belly of nice. The men from Marseille are already there. And there's a new face now. A specialist. An older man who knows how to work with concrete and steel without making a sound. The kind of man who never raises his voice because his hands do all the talking. Albert listens. The words swirl. Holiday weekend. For days. Bastille Day celebrations to cover the noise. He files them away like camera settings. Then, casually, the specialist mentions a problem. A new sensor installed on the vault's outer wall. He interrupts. Repeat that. The man blinks. I said, the bank upgraded the seismic sensors. On the walls, not the floor. Albert asks. The man smiles, too slowly. And Albert knows this isn't just a briefing. This is the final test. He stands. No anger, no outburst, just a profound stillness. The tunnel seems to lean into his. Silence. We don't go through the walls, he says again, and leaves. On the way out, a shadow detaches from a corner. One of his lookouts. Ready? The man asks. Albert nods. They never look at the floor. The next night, the seismic sensor on the wall mysteriously malfunctions. No alarms, just a dead signal. And Albert goes back to his rooftop. The distant watcher isn't there tonight, but a small, hand-drawn map remains, tucked under a loose tile. A child's drawing of a tunnel leading to a box of gold. The morning fog hangs over Nice like a lazy ghost, clinging to the palm trees and the grand facades of the Belle Epoque hotels. The city breathes slow in the early light, but some corners of Nice never really sleep. Beneath one such corner, in the dark, damp belly of the city, something quietly extraordinary is about to begin. A group of men sit in a brick-lined sewer tunnel, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of battery-powered lanterns. The air is thick with the smell of wet earth and anticipation. They are waiting for a signal. One of them, A young man named Michel keeps glancing at the tunnel entrance, his hands folded too tightly in his lap. He already knows the story probably doesn't end with a quiet retirement on the coast. The signal comes. A single buzz on a walkie-talkie. Two men, casual, clean-shaven, emerge from the deeper darkness. One smiles, the other doesn't. They don't speak to Michel. They don't need to. He understands. This is it. This is the point of no return. A few minutes later, the waiting is over. The lanterns are extinguished, and the men move deeper into the labyrinth, their work boots splashing softly in the shallow water. No blood, no sound, just progress. This is Albert Spaggiari's preferred punctuation mark. Silent, deliberate action at the same moment. In an apartment overlooking the city, a woman sets down her phone. Her husband, a junior manager at the Société Générale, hasn't answered in hours. She thinks about calling again, then doesn't. Maybe he's just working late. Later, she'll learn he never made it home. He was being followed, observed, his routine logged and memorized. Albert Spaggiari already knows this. He's watching. From a distance, behind the tinted windows of a rented Fiat, parked half a block from the bank. Not because he needs confirmation, but because sometimes, when a plan works perfectly, you need to feel the pieces click into place for yourself. Inside the car, his lieutenant, Jean-Pierre, lights a Galois's. "You sure this is the weekend?" he asks, exhaling toward the cracked dashboard. Albert nods. Bastille, day, fireworks, parades, music. The city will be deaf for 3 days. Bold Jean-Pierre leans back, watching the street. Or stupid, Albert shrugs. Sometimes they're the same thing. There's a pause. Then Albert speaks again, slower this time. They put a new sensor on the north wall, an acoustic one. Jean-Pierre turns his head. "You think we're being watched? I know we are. Many people still think that old-school heists are about brute force. That you smash a wall, grab the cash, and run." But Albert Spaggiari wasn't a smasher. He was a student of systems. He knew that every fortress has a flaw, a blind spot, a place where the architects got lazy or overconfident. And for the Société Générale, that flaw was the flaw. But unlike some of his crew, he had to deal with a new generation of security. Men who believed in fiber optics and motion detectors, and Instagram-famous detectives who could replace intuition with algorithms. Case in point, the bank's head. Of security, a man everyone called Le Flambeur, the showman. Not his real name. His real name was Henry Dubois, but no one had called him that since he got his first tailored suit and started wearing cologne that announced his arrival from 3 blocks away. He was flashy, arrogant, and disturbingly good at his job. Albert hated him. Not because Le Flambeur was a threat, but because he was unpredictable in the wrong way. He didn't understand subtlety. He didn't know when to be quiet. And worst of all, he kept showing up for random inspections at the bank on weekends. So when Albert receives word that Le Flambeur has planned a surprise security drill for Bastille Day weekend, he doesn't send a warning. He sends flowers. A massive bouquet of lilies, delivered to Le Flambeur's wife, with a simple card. "Enjoy your weekend in the countryside. Signed, an admirer." Le Flambeur's wife, who has been begging him for a weekend away for months, is delighted. Le Flambeur, who knows no one would send him flowers, is immediately suspicious. He cancels the drill. He spends the entire weekend at home, paranoid, watching the street, convinced a rival is trying to lure him away. He never once thinks to check the sewer. Message received. Meanwhile, Albert returns to his ritual. The rooftop, the wind, the unlit cigarette. Tonight, he's not alone. His wife joins him, bringing 2 glasses of wine. She doesn't ask what he's planning. She doesn't need to. She just sits beside him. "You're thinking again," she says. He considers. "No," he says. "Just listening." And that somehow sounds more honest than anything else he said all day. Down below, the city continues to breathe. And Albert, he listens to the streets, to the silence, to the tiny noises that tell him when something's off. Because this city doesn't yell. It whispers, and tonight he hears something new. The faint, rhythmic thump, thump, thump of a jackhammer miles away, muffled by the earth. It's subtle, another crew, maybe, or just construction. He turns toward the edge of the rooftop. The phone buzzes once. New message, we're in. He stares into the dark. This isn't about money anymore. It's about art. The kind that doesn't belong in a museum. The kind that gets people erased without explanation. He slips the phone into his pocket and walks down the stairs. Slower now. Measured by the time he reaches the alley behind the building, Jean-Pierre is already waiting. "Car ready," he says. "Sewer route or surface?" Albert doesn't answer immediately. He glances at the streetlight flickering above. Then back to the fan in the window, still rotating on its tired hinge. "Neither," he says. "We go to the church," Jean-Pierre swallows. He knows what that means. That's where the old Corsican loyalists still hide. The ones who speak in whispers and move like dust. And tonight, Albert is going to ask them for a blessing he never thought he'd need. Because when you're about to drill a hole into the heart of France, you need more than a plan. You need faith. The Church of Saint Pierre d'Irene isn't on any tourist guide. It's the kind of place that doesn't just hide in the city. It camouflages, tucked behind a fish market. Its stone walls are stained with salt and memory. At night, it smells like incense and damp stone. During the day, it smells like nothing, like the place learned how to erase its own presence. Albert moves through the nave as if stepping back in time. No tour groups here, no selfie sticks, just the distant hum of a city too busy to notice its own history. He stops before a small side chapel, half hidden behind old scaffolding, a tiny carving near the altar, a barely visible Moor's head. The kind of mark only the old families would recognize. He kneels, waits, then taps the floor twice. This time, quick. A section of the flagstones shifts without a sound. No creak, no greeting, just an old man in a dark cassock who motions with his head. Albert steps down into the crypt. The corridor is lined with crumbling mosaics. At the end of the crypt, a single wooden chair sits beneath a faded fresco of a forgotten saint. "Sit," the old man says, his voice like dry leaves rustling. Albert obeys. It's been years since he's spoken to Don Vito, not because of disrespect, but because people like Don Vito aren't part of the new world. Their legacy, like old maps in a drawer no one opens. Quiet, dependable, and only used when you're truly lost. "You look like a man about to commit a sin or a miracle," Don Vito says, not unkindly. "I'm not sure which yet." "Good," the old man replies, "because God has no patience left for certainty." Albert takes a breath. The vault is ready. The team is in place. But the noise. Don Vito raises an eyebrow. "Bastille die, it's not enough. The new sensors are too sensitive." The old man stands, walks to an alcove behind the chair, and pulls out a folded city works schedule. He holds it like it's dipped in holy water. "You ever hear?" of the Promenade des Anglais fireworks finale. Albert shakes his head. Exactly, Don Vichu mutters. Because that's what the city wants. He hands the paper over. On it, a schedule. Midnight, a 20-minute ground-shaking finale, coordinated with the airport for a flyover. The whole city will be looking up, listening to the sky. A memory prickles at the edge of Albert's mind. A flyover. They do this every year, Don Vichu corrects. And if someone's digging a tunnel at the exact same time, well, even God can't hear everything at once. Albert folds the paper. Don Vichu leans in. Tell me, Albert, do you feel the ground shifting? Albert nods once. Don Vichu sighs. Then be careful where you plant your next step. Nice doesn't forgive hesitation. Back outside, the sky begins to soften. That fine Riviera mist that doesn't fall but lingers, clinging to hair and collarbones. Albert doesn't hurry. He walks with the kind of pace that says, I'm not lost, but I'm not arriving either. By the time he reaches the car, Jean-Pierre is already inside. The priests say anything useful, he asks. Gave me a timetable for the fireworks. You knew, Jean-Pierre shrugs. Only from whispers, ghost stories. A man who builds tunnels under other people's feet. Albert doesn't smile. He left a trail this time. They drive in silence for a while, passing crumbling walls sprayed with graffiti that probably meant something once. One reads Fidati solo del silencio. Trust only silence. Later that night, Albert returns to his studio, peels off his jacket, and stands at the sink. He stares at his reflection longer than usual. He doesn't see himself. He sees his father, not the quiet watchmaker, the one before. The soldier who once spent an hour rigging a wire so it would fall just right when the enemy patrol came over the hill. Quiet dignity, obsessive control, and above all, the belief that chaos could be managed. Was Albert trying to inherit that belief, or just wear it like a suit too big for his shoulders? He flips the darkroom light on. The room feels better in red. Elsewhere, in a damp sewer tunnel 2 districts away, 3 men huddle over a concrete saw. One wears goggles, one wears earplugs. The third, silent, takes notes in a book designed to be burned in their hands. The final piece of equipment. A custom-built hydraulic press. Silent, powerful, slow. They won't drill the final hole. They'll press it. Spaggiari knows. One of them whispers. He's not chasing. He's waiting. A pause, and that's worse. The next morning, Albert doesn't go to the rooftop. He goes to a small cafe on the Cours Salia. Real espresso, old brick walls. A pastry chef who doesn't know what Instagram is. The barista knows Albert by sight, but not by name. He asks, the usual. Albert nods. He takes his coffee outside and sits at a tiny table beneath an awning that's lost most of its stripes. Across the street, a man pretends to read a newspaper for 20 minutes. Albert lets him, then stands, walks across calmly, and drops a sugar packet by the man's shoe. Next time you tail me, he says softly, try a different hat. The man doesn't look up. But later that day, he's pulled from surveillance duty. Quietly, no reprimand, no promotion, just gone. Like a file removed from a cabinet. That night, Albert returns to the sewer. This time, it's he who's asked for. The meeting, same tunnel, same damp air. But this time, the others wait for him. He lets them gather first. Then, with a slow breath, he places a folded map of Nice on a dry crate. Every street marked, some circled, some underlined, and at the center, the bank. Things are moving, he says. No, one man corrects. Things are about to break. Albert folds the map again, then says, maybe it's time they did. Because fixing a broken system doesn't mean rebuilding it the same way. Sometimes it means drawing a new map and watching who follows it first. The sewer isn't a place that wakes, it just shifts. Like a sleeping animal that senses it's being watched but doesn't bother opening its eyes. By midnight, the heat of the day has dissipated, but the humidity remains, pooling in the tunnels. And creeping up the brick walls, vespers dart through the streets above. Young men lean on cafe terraces like they're in a movie poster. Sharp suits, quick eyes, and the unmistakable posture of those who know the police are busy with tourists tonight. And in the midst of it all, there are the men in the tunnel. They're not soldiers, not yet. They're craftsmen, specialists, ghosts in training. Men with hands too calloused for photography and minds too sharp for honest work. Most of them don't know more than a few first names, but they know their job. They know which pipes carry water and which carry waste. They know how to move in the dark even when no one else is moving. And crucially, they know who signs the unspoken paycheck. Albert sees them everywhere now, even in his sleep. On corners, refueling with bread and cheese, sharing a bottle of cheap wine with the kind of camaraderie that hasn't yet met betrayal. He knows their rhythms better than they do. He used to be one of them, not in the sewers, but in Indochina. He rode with them, watched, listened, one of them. A wiry demolitions expert called Le Sec, the dry one, has just finished setting the final charge. A small, shaped explosive designed to crack concrete without sending a shockwave. He wipes his hands on a rag and leans against a damp wall, waiting. Albert, wearing dark overalls and a miner's headlamp, approaches on foot. Casual, quiet, Le Sec, he says. The man jumps, then quickly lowers his eyes. Monsieur Spaggiari, easy, Albert says. You set the device. Le Sec nods. To the millimeter, just like the diagram, and the detonator. Remote, timed to the first firework of the finale. No questions, but what? There was a rat down here, a big one. Albert studies the man for a moment. Did you remember what kind? Yeah, Le Sec says, smiling like he's just passed a test, brown, and not afraid of us. Albert memorizes the detail. Good, he did well. Is this about the money? The man asks, his voice cracking just slightly. No, Albert says. It's about art. Le Sec doesn't ask what kind. Smart man. Later that day, Albert sits in a rented room above a bakery. The smell of fresh bread coats, the air, theirs. A fan with 3 blades wobbling like it's had one too many glasses of pastis. Across from him sits an old forger with a crooked nose and fewer morals than a deck of cards. The forger used to make passports for the big players in the 60s, back when the Corsican mafia still wore hats to meetings. These days, he mostly drinks coffee and complains about the price of ink. You remember the rat? Albert asks. The forger nods. Yeah, brown, Norwegian, came in on a freighter last week. The dock workers are talking. The ship was from Albania. The woman inside. The forger shrugs. Could be anyone. Docks are crawling with ghosts these days. Could be Albanian intelligence. Could be Interpol, or worse, Albert murmurs. The forger leans forward. You think this is about the vault again? Albert nods. Too many people sniffing around. It's like they think the game is about the gold. It's about the silence. The forger chuckles dryly. Maybe it is, but the rats always follow. The cheese. That evening, the streets around Place Messina fill with crowds waiting for the fireworks. They wear their best clothes, push each other around, shout bets on which color will be the loudest. One of them, a plainclothes policeman, notices Albert watching from a shaded balcony and freezes for just a second, then pretends not to. That's how respect moves now. Not in salutes or rings kissed, but in pauses that say, I know who you are, even if I act like I don't. Albert stays there a while, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning, not for threats, but for patterns. There's a rhythm to this city, like a song always on loop. But lately, a few notes have changed. The police are looking over their shoulders more often. The old-timers are staying inside. And the whispers, always in motion, have shifted tone. One in particular, a new player is in town. No one says a name. No one needs to, because every time power shifts, someone tests the wire. Albert leaves before the first firework. On his way back, he takes the long route past the opera house with its shattered windows and graffiti that reads, Nous sommes toujours là. We are still here. He walks past a vendor selling roasted chestnuts, still somehow a thing. And finally, through the alley where a man once left an envelope full of cash under a broken brick, he kneels, pulls the brick loose. Nothing there, but now the ritual is complete. He can go back. Back at his studio, he pours a glass of water and sips it slowly. The fan hums, like it's tired of pretending to work. He steps onto the balcony. The city spreads below him, endless and quiet and not his, not really, just on loan. And in that quiet, his walkie-talkie buzzes again. This time, a voice, unfamiliar. Calm, male, English. Mr. Spaggiari, he says, you were not being careful enough. The rat you saw had friends. The vault is one target. There are others, a pause. And some of us still know how to send messages that don't require a tunnel, click, silence. Albert doesn't move. He stands there, letting the wind lift the edges of his collar. He turns off the walkie-talkie, then immediately calls Jean-Pierre. It's real, Albert says. The Albanian ship, no worse. It's organized. Jean-Pierre doesn't curse. He doesn't breathe loud. He just says, so now what? Albert looks out across the concrete, down into the courtyard where children chase each other between laundry lines and cracked pavement. We listen for the fireworks. Jean-Pierre chuckles. You think the noise will cover us? It always does, Albert replies, even when it's not supposed to. Because, in Nice, the loudest explosion can carry the quietest secret. And sometimes, the road to the truth starts with nothing more than a spark and a very patient hand. The alley smells like salt air and diesel. There's something oddly comforting about it, like a Sunday dinner interrupted by a silent alarm. Albert walks with a slow rhythm, his shoes scuffing softly against the worn cobblestones. Overhead, sheets flutter from balconies like flags of exhausted nations. Nice is always airing its secrets. He stops outside a rusted iron gate marked only by a faded sticker. Atelier de Souda, Michel and Fields. Michel and Son's welding shop. There's no shop anymore, and Michel hasn't been seen in years. But inside that forgotten space, tucked, beneath layers of broken tools and discarded blueprints, is a man Albert hasn't spoken to in months, André. They called him Logwill, the needle, because he always threaded the impossible. Not in a tailor's sense, more in the removal of inconvenient structural problems, since André was a loyalist from the old guard, a remnant, and tonight. Albert needed a remnant. He pushes the gate. It creaks open like it's waking from a long nap. Andre sits behind a metal desk, sleeves rolled, safety goggles perched on the edge of his nose. He's fiddling with a welding torch and a piece of scrap metal. It's hard to tell if he's repairing something or preparing something. "You've aged," Andre says without looking up. "Not older," Albert replies. "Wiser, we'll see." Andre gestures at the chair across from him. Albert sits. "There's a team," Albert begins. English, involved with an Albanian ship that shouldn't exist. They speak in riddles, send messages that evaporate. Andre chuckles. "Ah, one of those. Their name might be connected to someone from London. A man named a Gent." That earns a twitch from Andre. The torch pauses midair. "I haven't heard that name in a long time," he mutters, which usually means it's the right one. Is he still active? Not in the traditional sense. Albert waits. Andre eventually continues, voice lower now. "The Gent didn't retire. He disappeared just before a massive shipment of gold vanished en route to Switzerland. Everyone assumed he was killed. I didn't. He was always 3 steps ahead of his own betrayal, and the team could be the crew he was grooming to replace him. He used to say, 'I want men who understand both balance sheets and blasting caps.' A romantic idiot." Albert says, "Maybe both," Andre replies. Nodding, they sit in silence for a moment. Outside, a Vespa rattles past, followed by the sound of a woman arguing with someone from her balcony in melodramatic French. Then Andre leans in. "He left you a message, didn't he?" "Yes." "And you didn't answer?" "I did. And now," he says, "there are others." Andre leans back. "Then you're already behind." By the time Albert exits the building, the sky has shifted into that hazy Riviera gold where the light seems to press against the buildings rather than illuminate them. He walks to the corner where Jean-Pierre waits inside a black Citroën. "He has a name," Albert says, sliding in. "Go on." "The Gent. Sounds like a spy in a bad film. He's real. Might be connected to a missing gold shipment. Might be a freelance spook. Might be both. So what now?" "We send him a gift." The gift is simple. A bottle of expensive champagne delivered via motorcycle courier to a hotel suite he's never officially checked into. Inside, the foil of the cork is a microdot, empty. No data, no code, just the outline of a possibility. Albert doesn't include a note, because the message isn't about the content. It's about knowing where he is. Hours later, a single image appears on Albert's pager. A photo of the empty champagne bottle, taken on a silk tablecloth with a pistol in the background, pointed just slightly out of frame. The Gent has responded. That night, Albert doesn't go home. He walks to a cafe in the old town where the lights buzz and the espresso burns just enough to keep you humble. The owner, Enzo, is in his 70s and still calls him Le Photographe. Even though Albert once arranged the disappearance of his cousin's gambling debts, it's water under the bridge now. Albert sits in the corner, orders nothing, waits. Enzo brings him a folded napkin and sets it down with theatrical flair. Inside the napkin, a note. The bankers talk more than they should. The jewelers still count, even when they're closed. Meet me where the diamonds used to bleed. No signature, but Albert doesn't need one. The diamonds used to bleed at an abandoned cutting workshop on the edge of the Port District, a place where rust outnumbers people and cats bark at nothing. He gets up, leaves the cafe, nods at Enzo, and vanishes into the night. The workshop smells of mildew and metal dust. Even after years, the scent doesn't go. It clings to the bricks like regret. He's already there. The gent, standing beside a broken window, lit by nothing but the orange spill of distant dock lights. He wears a grey coat, hair perfectly combed, eyes like he's measuring every possibility of betrayal within a 5-meter radius. You found me, he says. You invited me. Fair. A beat. You're smarter than they say, he adds. Why I'm not in jail? The gent almost smiles. Yet, they walk through the empty corridors, past rusted benches and stained floorboards. It feels like walking inside a clock that's been long since stopped. You want to know what's on the ship, he says. Albert doesn't respond. The gent continues anyway. It's not yours. It was sent to me. No, Albert says. It was sent near me. That's not the same. He stops walking. Are you working for the government? The gent stops. Too. I'm working for myself. That's worse. Why involve me? Because you're not a common thief. A pause. You hesitate. That means you're still an artist. That lands heavier than it should. Then, he adds, also, I needed to know if you could track a ghost. You did. You tested me. No, I introduced myself. He steps closer. Albert doesn't flinch. There are 3 more shipments, he whispers. One's in Zurich, one's in Monaco, the third, I'm not even sure it exists. What's in them? Histories, he says, and futures. Then he hands him a card, blank on one side. On the back, a number 12 digits. No area code. Call it, he says. And everything either ends or begins. Before Albert can ask another question. He walks out. No goodbye, no parting shot. Just the sound of his leather shoes scuffing across diamond-dusted tiles. And in the distance, a foghorn starts to blow. Maybe at nothing. Maybe it's someone walking away with too many secrets. The number on the card stares up at Albert from the dashboard of the Citroën like it's breathing. 12 digits. No country code. Not formatted like a phone number. More like a bank account or a password from a different life. He hasn't called. It, not yet. The fan in the car turns slowly, clicking each time it leans left. Like it's reminding him that waiting has a sound. Outside the streets of Nice move, through their nightly symphony, music spilling from bars, tires hissing on wet asphalt, sirens wailing faintly in the distance. But the car is quiet. It always is when he's deciding something. Silence has weight. In Albert's world, it presses on his ribs. He picks up the card again, still cold, still blank. He turns it over one more time, just in case something's changed. It hasn't. In another part of town, his wife is sleeping. The negatives in his studio are drying. The men in the sewer are waiting for the fireworks. The whole world is holding its breath. He starts the car and drives, not home, not to the bank, but up into the hills. He stops at a scenic overlook. The city is a blanket of lights below. He takes out a small, encrypted radio, a relic from his days in the service. He keys in the 12-digit number. The radio hisses, crackles, then a voice. Not the gent, a woman, crisp, British accent. You're slow, she says. Try again, Monaco. That's it. No threats, no promises. Just an instruction wrapped in condescension. He closes his eyes for a moment, then dials a number on a burner phone he's kept saved under the name Mario's Pizza. Mario doesn't know a pizza from a landmine, but he does know how to Get into Monaco without being seen. When the line picks up, Albert says only 2 words. Start packing. 2 days later, they arrive on the outskirts of Monaco. It's warmer than it should be. Blue sky, sea wind, and that heavy, moneyed air, like everyone's carrying a stock portfolio in their coat pocket. Mario parks the car beside an old cafe, with chipped tables and a waiter who hasn't smiled since Grace Kelly's wedding. The kind of place you only go when you don't want to be remembered. Inside, a man behind the counter gestures with his chin. Back room, he says. Albert walks in. The room is small, dim. A single bulb swings slowly, casting shadows that dance like they're mocking him. The gent is there again. This time he's holding one of the other briefcases, still closed, still taped, still humming with the possibility of ruin. You came, he says, sipping from a glass of mineral water. You called. He smiles faintly. That's the difference between you and the others. Explain. They would have sent someone. Albert pulls out the champagne cork, the one with the microdot. He holds it up. Is this you? The gent looks at it, then takes a lighter from his pocket and sets the cork on fire. The foil curls, blackens, disintegrates in a glass ashtray. He doesn't answer. You're protecting someone, Albert says. No, he replies. I'm protecting the plan. Albert laughs, once dry. I don't need protecting. The gent leans in, his voice like steam. You're holding a match near a room full of gas, Albert, and the people inside are already choking. A beat. What happens when you light it anyway? He doesn't reply, because he already knows, and yet he's not going to stop. Monaco at dusk doesn't whisper the way Nice does. It hums, a low, electric thrum of money and engines and secrets kept behind mirrored glass. The streets carry the smell of expensive perfume and exhaust. Casino. Lights bleed into the twilight, promising fortunes that were never meant to be one. In a city built on the illusion of luck, Albert Spaggiari moves like a foreign equation. Understood, but unwelcome. The cafe behind him fades into night as the car climbs through the winding streets. Mario drives with one hand, the other casually, resting on the door handle, like he's prepared to exit at any moment. Neither of them speaks. They don't have to. The briefcase sits on Albert's lap, still cold, still sealed, still heavier than its contents should allow. Want me to take it to the safe house? Mario asks. No, Albert replies. And that's the end of that. They pass to valets, smoking outside the casino, silk shirts curling behind them like smoke. Vincenzo, o perdi, e sempre una scommessa. Win or lose, it's always a bet. Albert closes his eyes just for a second, long enough to hear a memory. His father, the watchmaker, sitting in his dusty workshop, the old man speaking with that dry patience only true craftsmen have. Precision is cheap if you don't test it and trust. Young Albert had asked. You don't buy it, his father said. You build it, gear by gear. The safe house in Monaco is misnamed. It's not a house. It's a rented yacht that still smells of champagne and regret. The main cabin holds a bed, a lamp swinging, from a hook and a plastic crate full of burner phones. Mario helps Albert unload without questions. Once inside, Albert sets the briefcase on the table and inspects the lock. It's not mechanical, it's electronic. He tilts the case, feels the internal mechanism shift, balanced like a bomb. What now? Mario asks. Albert pulls the card from his pocket. The one with the 12-digit number. It doesn't open it. Of course, it doesn't. This isn't about numbers. It never was. The gent had said there were 3. The briefcase in Nice was an invitation. This one is a test. He turns to Mario. Get me someone who understands Swiss security systems and has very small hands. Mario gives him a look, then nods and pulls out a phone. 30 minutes later, a woman arrives, maybe 30 years old, with an oversized toolkit and tired eyes. She plugs a small device into the briefcase, boots up a handheld terminal, and stares at the lock like it's a puzzle box from an old myth. It's pressure sensitive, she mutters. We can't crack it without the original schematic or a complete power surge. Then surge it. I need time. You have until the fireworks start. The woman blinks and gets to work. While the terminal clicks and worries, Albert steps onto the deck. The Monaco air is thick, heavy with the scent of salt and money. Somewhere nearby, a yacht party spills music across the water. Jean-Pierre calls. You alive? He asks. For now, any word from the gent? He burned the only clue I had, so that's a no. He says he's protecting the plan. Jean-Pierre snorts. That's what people say when they're about to sell. You out? There's silence between them. Then Albert says, if this briefcase has what I think it has, everything changes. Jean-Pierre's voice flattens. So don't open it. I have to. No, you want to. You think it's the next step. Maybe it is, or maybe it's the last. The call ends. The fan on the dashboard turns in his mind. Back in that car, always ticking. Back inside, the woman frowns. I need 1 more hour. You said 3. I said I need 3. You gave me 2. Albert doesn't argue. Instead, he flips through a yachting magazine he found. This time, he notices something he hadn't before. A small, classified ad tucked into the back pages. Lost, 1 English gentleman. Last seen chasing ghosts. Reward offered. He pulls. It outslides a photo older than the others. Faded, corners curled. A young gent smiling, and beside him, unmistakably, the British woman from the radio, standing in a room full of wires and servers. The early days of signals intelligence. Albert stares at the background, and that's when he sees it. A schematic pinned to the wall. A briefcase lock. He takes a photo with a microcamera, shows it to the lockpicker. That's it, she says. That's the bypass. She types in a new code. The briefcase hisses open with a sound like steam escaping a cracked pipe. Inside, nothing. No documents, no drive, just a folded napkin. And on the napkin, good. You knew not to trust the lock. Now we see if you trust the silence. Beneath it, another 12-digit number. Mario reads it. Another code. No. Albert mutters. Another destination. He closes the case, slower this time. Every move now, every trip, every conversation, it's choreography. The gent's choreography. But the difference between a puppet and a partner is choice. And Albert, he's still choosing, even when it feels like he's not. As they leave the yacht, the first firework explodes over the harbour. Albert notices something scrolled into the pier near the gangplank. Not graffiti, a chalk mark. You can follow the ghosts, just don't become one. He touches the groove of the letters. They're fresh, and suddenly, he's not sure who's watching who. Nice again. The city doesn't welcome him back with open arms. It watches him return like a parent who knows you've been up to no good. Indifferent on the surface, worried just beneath. As Albert steps off the train, The air feels heavier, more humid. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's the knowledge that every police informant has already pinged his location. He exits through a side gate. No fanfare, no escort. Just the hum of wheels, the murmur of crowds, and one man walking into a network of invisible wires, each step tugging gently at loyalties he's not even sure he still has. The second, 12-digit number from the decoy briefcase didn't unlock anything. Not a safe, not a door, not a phone line. It simply brought him home with more questions than when he left. Back in his studio, the negatives have been rearranged. New faces, slightly older. The ones Albert knew, the Marseille crew, have started, disappearing from their usual haunts. Some have vanished altogether. One man, maybe 50, catches his eye. A new recruit, to clean. Albert doesn't know his name. He just watches. The man notices, nods once, then turns away. Seconds later, a message appears on Albert's pager. Bankvault, level 2, midnight. Alone, that's the target. Where the air is thick with the smell of money and reinforced concrete. Midnight. At the Société Générale is eerie. During the day, it's all crisp suits and tellers with forced smiles. At night, its security camera hums and motion-activated lights that flicker on long after you've passed them. Albert waits in the sewer tunnel below. He's alone. At 12:04 a.m., a man in a bank uniform approaches from a side passage. He's not tall, not imposing, just efficient. The kind of man who probably irons his shoelaces. "You're Albert," he says, not a question. "And you?" The man smiles faintly, an errant. He pulls out a tape recorder, presses play. The gent's voice. Don't trust the alarms. Their silence reflects the wrong parts of the system. A pause. You're closer now. But the next step isn't through the floor, it's behind. Then silence. The man pockets the recorder, hands Albert an envelope. Inside, a keycard. Time-stamped 1407, issued for Maintenance Closet B, sub-basement. The man leaves without a word. Albert doesn't follow. He doesn't need to. The next morning, he drives himself. No escort, no Jean-Pierre. He uses a forged work order to get into the bank's sub-basement, scanning the concrete for the closet marked on the keycard. Level 3, row C. Slot 17. He finds it locked. Of course. He uses the keycard. It works. He steps out, checks the wall behind the shelves. A smudge of fresh paint. Different shade of grey. He knocks. Hollow. Albert retrieves a small crowbar from his toolkit, kneels, gently taps the edge of the paint. Flakes begin to fall. Then a seam. Then a panel. He slides it aside. Inside a narrow crawl space, and at the far end, lit by a single bare bulb, another briefcase. This one is different. Worn leather, no lock. He pulls it out and opens it right there on the concrete floor. Inside, a folded schematic of the vault's alarm system, marked with 3 red dots, a burner phone with no contacts, and a sealed manila envelope. He opens the envelope. Inside, a photograph taken 2 days ago of Jean-Pierre sitting with a man Albert doesn't recognize. Across from them, the British woman from the radio. The photo is grainy, but the implication is clear. He's been played. Back in his car, Albert doesn't move for a long time. Not because he's frozen, because he's calculating. If Jean-Pierre is talking to the British team without telling him, it means one of 2 things. 1. Jean-Pierre is trying to protect him. 2. Jean-Pierre is trying to replace him. Neither option feels good. He stares at the burner phone, then powers it on. One message waits, from a contact called simply K. This isn't betrayal. Albert, it's a different kind of loyalty. Call me when you're ready to stop performing as the gentleman thief. He closes the phone. That's the second time someone's accused him of being a performer. And maybe they're not wrong. But what if the performance isn't weakness? What if it's camouflage? That evening, Albert returns to his rooftop. The hand-drawn map is gone. The photo of the gent and the British woman gone, too. Only the fan remains, still spinning, still ticking. He adds something beside it. The new photo, Jean-Pierre, the woman, the unknown man. Then he sits on the tiles, legs crossed. No drink, no smoke. Just the sounds of the city. Vespers whining, babies crying, televisions too loud through thin walls. He picks up the burner again and texts back, "Tell me what's next." No reply yet. Meanwhile, in a government building, not marked on any map, two analysts sit before a bank of monitors. One sips cold tea, the other types rapidly. They pause on a frame. Albert crawling out of the maintenance closet. The camera above had no business being operational, but it was. They zoom in, enhance the briefcase, the schematic, the phone. One analyst turns to the other. He's in deeper than we thought. The other shrugs. Or exactly where she wants him. Should we inform Task Force 5? No. Pause. Let the story play. We're learning more from watching. The screen flickers, and Albert, completely unaware of the watchers, drives off into the Riviera dusk, pursuing a shadow he might never catch. Or worse, one he might already have become. Rain in Nice isn't romantic. It doesn't dance gently on windows or mist the air like something from a postcard. It falls hard, slanted, with the fury of a place that doesn't believe in subtlety. Gutters overflow. Streets shimmer with the ghosts of diesel and old cigarette ash. And Albert Spaggiari, sitting in the front seat of a borrowed Peugeot, watches the downpour beat against the windshield like it's trying to rewrite. Something in water the burner phone hasn't lit up. Again. Not since that message. Tell me what's next. He checks it one more time, as if repetition will coax an answer from the void. Still nothing. Jean-Pierre hasn't called either, but Albert knows he's watching, somewhere behind a curtain. Maybe even behind a camera. He exhales through his nose and turns the key. The engine sputters, grumbles like it doesn't want to be part of this anymore, and then gives in. The schematic from the sub-basement briefcase lies unfolded on the passenger seat. 3 red dots. One of them already visited the maintenance. Closet the second, a half-demolished hotel outside town. The third, the sea, or rather, something beneath it. But first, the hotel. It takes 30 minutes to reach it. The building crouches on the edge of an old coastal road. Its windows long, gone, its balconies sheared in half like broken teeth. Bougainvillea has clawed its way through what remains of the plaster facade. The front gate doesn't creak, it groans, metal grinding against memory. Albert parks beneath an old olive tree and steps out, his coat already heavy with rain. He's not expecting anyone, which is why the man on the second floor surprises him. Thin, wiry, wearing a tracksuit that must have been fashionable sometime in the last century. He watches Albert from the hollow of a window, a cigarette glowing faintly in the wet air. Albert doesn't speak, he just waits. The man raises a hand and tosses down a key. It lands in a puddle. No words, no nod. Just the impact and the slow. Ripples. Albert picks it up, wipes it on his sleeve, and walks inside. The key fits the rusted service door. Inside, it smells of mold, wet plaster, and champagne that gave up years ago. The hallway is lined with peeling wallpaper, faded palms, birds with missing eyes, patterns that have been scratched away by time or rage. He walks past them at the end of the corridor, a wooden bench, and on the bench, a package wrapped in plastic. No note. He kneels and slices the tape open with a pocket knife. Inside, a small hard drive, a single sheet of paper folded 3 times, and a photograph. He unfolds the paper first. Typed, clean. Open this drive in a system without internet. Use the terminal key labeled Archives, Nicosis, at Library Sabrosa. If you're being followed, burn this note immediately. The photograph, his wife, the photographer, sitting at a table with 2 other men. One is blurred deliberately. The other, the gent, younger, thinner, smiling. His hand is on his wife's shoulder. The photo is dated 1972. Albert stares at it, lips slightly parted, then folds the picture and note, slips them into his coat. The hard drive he pockets, and then he stands. There's no one else in the hotel now, not even the man in the tracksuit, just the rain.library. Sabrosa isn't a library. It's a basement bookshop in the old town run by a woman named Dorothy, who hasn't spoken out loud in 12 years. People say her vocal cords were damaged in an accident. Others say she simply got tired of answering stupid questions. Albert arrives after sunset. The door chimes softly as he enters. Dorothy Docenti look up. She just gestures to the back. A long wooden table beneath an arched ceiling. 1 computer terminal. Ancient, beige, humming like a sleepy priest. He inserts the hard drive. It boots a local-only application. A single window with a blinking prompt. No files, just text. Welcome, Albert. A second later, more appears. The first plan your wife kept wasn't digital, but she knew someone would digitize it someday. You have 10 minutes. Then a folder appears. He opens it. Dozens of documents, schematics, notes, names, some familiar, some forgotten, and one, Jean-Pierre, not just mentioned, outlined. Jean-Pierre Dubois, code C2 row, contingency handler, trust level, conditional. Beneath it, if trust is lost, activate protocol vendetta. There's no explanation of what vendetta is, but just the name makes Albert's throat go dry. The system beeps again. Time remaining, 2 minutes. He copies everything to a second USB key and ejects it. Wipes the hard drive, stands. Dorothy is waiting at the counter. She hands him a small matchbook with the word casino stamped on it. He nods a thanks, then leaves. The rain has stopped, but something colder has taken its place. That night, Albert doesn't go home. He returns to the rooftop. The photo of Jean-Pierre and the British woman is gone, too. Only the fan remains, still spinning, still ticking. He lights a match from the Casino Muto book and watches it burn down to his fingers before flicking it into the night. Then, from the shadows, you found it, the British woman. No warning, no announcement, just her silhouette beside the chimney. He doesn't jump. He's past surprise now. Why him? Albert asks. She doesn't pretend to misunderstand, because he didn't need power. He carried it quietly, like a man carrying his own funeral in his coat. I trusted him. You still can, she replies, but only if you're willing to find out what vendetta really is. He says nothing. She moves closer. You're not your wife's husband. I know. But the city still needs one. That part hangs in the air. And Albert realizes she's not offering an alliance. She's offering succession. But to what? His wife's plan, or something much older, quieter and more dangerous? Far below, a man in a dark suit gets into a car. He's not watching the traffic, he's watching them. And in his briefcase, a photograph of Albert with the words, "Observe." Report, do not engage. The car purrs to life and slips into the Riviera dark. Casino Muto isn't on any maps. It exists the way rumors do, spoken in half-truths and passed along like coughs in crowded rooms. Once a private gaming club for deposed royalty in the 50s, it's now a gutted husk wedged between a shuttered perfumery and an apartment building where no one answers the door on the first knock. Its entrance is a side door with a broken handle and a lock that responds only to patience. Albert arrives at 2 a.m., not because someone told him to, but because some places don't require instructions. They summon. He pushes the door. It resists, then yields. Inside, the air tastes of velvet dust and forgotten applause. The gaming floor is still there, half collapsed, framed by torn curtains that hang like wounded flags. Rows of chairs lie in crooked silence, their stuffing exposed, their wooden frames twisted like frozen dancers caught mid-fall. But someone has been here recently. A single lamp glows on the edge of the faro table, illuminating a chair and a small recorder. On the table, a folder, and beside it, the recorder already playing. The gent's voice emerges softly, almost apologetically. If you're hearing this, it means you've accepted the weight. That doesn't make you ready, it just makes you necessary. Albert steps forward. The voice continues. There are 4 names in that folder, each one tied to something your wife buried. Not out of guilt, out of strategy. These aren't enemies, they're architects. Find them, or find what they left behind. The tape clicks off. Albert opens the folder. Inside, for photographs. Don Vichu, the priest from the crypt. The gent, grainy, older, scowling beside a chalkboard covered in network roots. A man labelled only La Flamba, the showman a still from a security camera. And Jean-Pierre, again, same eyes, same knowing frown, attached to each photo, is a location, only one of them is still in Nice. Albert pockets the file, then freezes. There's a sound, soft, sharp, metal on metal. He turns. A figure in the balcony, silhouetted, gun raised. Instinct takes over. Albert drops behind the table as a shot cracks the air. Dust explodes from a casino chair behind him. He rolls, slides under the table, heart pounding. Footsteps overhead, measured, deliberate. Whoever it is doesn't shoot again. They're waiting for a clean shot. He breathes, listens, then hears something stranger than gunfire. A second pair of footsteps, not running, descending from backstage. He's being flanked. Albert pulls a small pistol from his ankle holster, whispers to himself, too theatrical. He slips out the opposite side, crouches low, darts for the exit. Another shot, it misses by inches. He barrels through the door, hits the alley, breath fogging in the night air. No time to process. No time to wonder who or why. Only time to run Dot back in his studio. He sits cross-legged on the floor. The fan spins, unconcerned. The folder lies open beside him. The photo of Jean-Pierre stares back, and Albert thinks not about who tried to kill him, but about why they missed. Because that shot, too high, too slow, was meant to scare, not kill. Someone's trying to guide him again, or test him, or both. He dials Jean-Pierre, voicemail. He dials the British woman. No answer. Finally, he texts Jean-Pierre, we need to talk. No shadows, just truth. Jean-Pierre replies, meet me at the vineyard, noon. The vineyard lies just outside Grasse, a family estate. Albert hasn't visited since he was 17, last time he was here. He watched his wife teach a man how to disappear without trace by whispering names in his ear as he signed away his fortune. He arrives early. Noon is a formality. Jean-Pierre is already waiting by the vines, holding 2 glasses of wine. Albert joins him, doesn't sit. You met with her, he says. Jean-Pierre nods. I did. Why? Because she has answers. You don't. That's not an answer. Jean-Pierre sips his wine, swirls it, doesn't look at Albert. She told me the truth about the gent, about your wife's deals, about the real reason you were never supposed to know. That last part stings more than the shot in the casino. Albert keeps his voice even. I've been the one holding this plan together. No, Jean-Pierre says. You've been holding a version of it, a replica. Your wife built something bigger, something global, and now someone has to decide if we restore it or dismantle it. Why not tell me? Because you weren't ready. Albert doesn't argue with that part. He lets the silence linger. The grapes shift in the wind behind them. Then he asks, what is vendetta? Jean-Pierre stiffens. Finally, a crack. It's not a plan, he says. It's a permission, to. Do what? To disappear the structure. Jean-Pierre says. Burn the ledgers, sink the safe houses, cut every name loose. Who controls it? Your wife did, and now, maybe you do. Albert sets down the wine. His hands are shaking, just slightly. So I can burn everything. Jean-Pierre nods. Or rebuild it. Another pause. Then Albert asks what he's been afraid to say out loud. Is the gent alive? Jean-Pierre doesn't answer right away. Then, softly, yes. And the British woman? She's his weapon, his heir, his insurance, and me. Jean-Pierre looks up. You were the fallback. But maybe that's what we needed all along. That night, Albert returns to Nice. He doesn't go home. He goes to the coast, where the 3rd red dot on the map sits just offshore. He boards a fishing boat at midnight, alone, no escort, no fanfare. The captain doesn't ask questions, just nods toward the horizon. Albert sits in the bow, the city behind him, the sea ahead, and in his coat, the burner phone, the folder, and the 4th name, still waiting, La Flambe, the one name without. A past, but maybe a future. The boat cuts through the Tyrrhenian dark like a blade through velvet. No wake, no music, just the slap of water against fiberglass, and the occasional hum of the engine throttling down to glide under radar. The captain, a silent man named Bruno, only gestures. He doesn't speak. He might not even know how anymore. Or maybe he's one of those Riviera men who's realized that silence earns more than chatter. They pass a weather buoy, then a rusted platform, then nothing, just the sea. Then Bruno raises a hand, points ahead. It looks like a pile of rocks at first. Then, as the clouds shift, a shape emerges. Low, square, concrete eaten by salt. An island, artificial, forgotten, l'Aile Oublie, they used to call it. The Forgotten Island. A Cold War relic once used by NATO for radio signal testing. Abandoned in the 90s, swallowed by paperwork and seagull droppings. But tonight, It's signaling something else. They dock. No lights, no ladder. Bruno throws a rope over a jagged pipe. Albert climbs. The ground is slick with algae and age. Every step sounds louder than it should. He reaches the top level, a small helipad, rusted and useless. A door nearby hangs crooked, leading into a stairwell that disappears underground. He checks his watch. 1:13 a.m. The red dot on the map had marked this exact spot, and here he is. He enters. The stairwell is tight, airless. His flashlight flickers, as if resisting the descent. The walls are lined with peeling tiles, still damp from a leak that never fixed itself. Each step creaks, but nothing responds. At the bottom, a corridor, one door, steel, half open. Inside, a room. A chair, a terminal, a single hanging bulb buzzing faintly overhead. On the chair, a tape recorder, and across the back wall, spray-painted in red, La Flambe n'y dort pas. The showman does not sleep. Albert exhales, sits, presses play. The voice isn't the gent's. It's older, male, familiar in a way that claws at something buried. Albert, if you're hearing this, you've come farther than anyone expected. That includes me. He freezes. It's his father-in-law, the quiet watchmaker. Alive. No, it's a recording, a relic. But it doesn't stop the shake in Albert's chest. You're not ready for what comes next. That's not an insult. It's a description. There is no vault. There is only the ledger. And the ledger does not care who writes it. A pause. La Flambe was never a person. It's a protocol, a vault. A ghost file encoded through dead networks. A trap door for when the entire house catches fire. Albert stands, looks around the room. The walls seem closer now. You were never meant to know it, but the gent did. And he gave the key to the British woman. She's not your enemy. She's not your friend. She's the ledger. The tape clicks off. For a second, Albert hears only his breathing. Then, something else. Behind the terminal, an old safe recessed in the concrete. He kneels. It opens easily inside. A drive. He recognizes the casing. Custom, British. Her style, a post-it stuck to the side. Open me in a room with no walls. Cryptic, predictable. Infuriating, he climbs back to the surface. The sky is a shade paler now. 3 a.m. perhaps. Nice glows faintly across the water, its lights blinking like tired eyes. Bruno waits, Albert boards. No questions, just departure. As they cross the water, Albert turns the drive over in his hands. If La Flambe is a protocol, what kind of protocol? Requires ghosts and threats and burner phones from 3 countries. And if the British woman is the ledger, then what the hell is Albert? The heir or the cleanup? Back in Nice, Albert does not go home. He goes to an old printing house near the port, long since converted into a private server bunker. One of his wife's more paranoid investments. Inside, rows of machines hum behind glass walls. He boots up a terminal. No cameras, no internet, just raw interface. He inserts the drive. It mounts instantly. One folder, La Flambe, activate. He clicks. The screen floods with code. Thousands of lines. Names, accounts, bank routing slips, passwords embedded in syntax, surveillance logs from government feeds, private video from Monaco, from the vineyard, from his own studio. It's not a trapdoor, it's a kill switch. La Flambe isn't just for hiding, it's for collapsing the entire network in one execution. One button. there's a final prompt at the bottom of the interface. Are you sure? And beside it, 2 buttons. Run or bury. No explanations, no instructions, just choice. And Albert, he doesn't press anything, not yet. Instead, he powers down the terminal, pockets the drive, and walks into the cold, early morning. At 6:03 a.m., he meets Jean-Pierre again. They sit on a bench outside a boarded-up hotel. Pigeons peck at nothing near their feet. Albert hands him the drive. Jean-Pierre looks at it, then looks at him. What's this? The ending. Jean-Pierre tilts his head. And you're giving it to me? No, Albert says. I'm watching what you do with it. They sit in silence. Then Jean-Pierre laughs. Your wife would have hated this. No, another silence. Then Albert says, I think I finally understand what she was afraid of. What? Not betrayal, not collapse. Then what? Legacy. And that lands heavier than either of them expect. Because the truth is, when you inherit shadows, the first thing you lose is your shape. And Albert, he's tired of fitting into someone else's silhouette. He stands, leaves Jean-Pierre on the bench, doesn't look back. Because whatever happens next, collapse, revival, retribution, it won't be born from obedience. It will be born from choice. And tonight, under the cover of the fireworks, Albert will make his. He's not a gentleman thief. He's not a performer. He's a photographer, and he's about to take one last, perfect picture. The sky over Nice bleeds gold, thick and syrupy. The kind of morning that looks like it should smell like croissants and promises. But inside Albert's studio, the air is still and grey. The fan clicks lazily overhead. The drive Jean-Pierre now holds stares back at him like a dare. He's already listed the gent, the British woman, his wife. And that last part, it isn't for a name, it's for a decision. He stares at the drive and knows, tonight the city chooses. Or he does. The burner phone buzzes again. Unknown number. Monaco, 1972. The ledger began there, ended where it was born. Attached is a flight number. One way, Nice to Zurich. Departing in 4 hours. No return scheduled. No sender listed. He picks up the phone, dials one number. Jean-Pierre, the call. Rings twice, then a gravelly voice. You're going, I have to. Silence. Then, need anything. Cover me, just once more. Another pause, then a sigh. God help us. And the line goes dead. Zurich, 12 hours later, is bong. Even in summer, the city wears its efficiency like armor. Sharp, constant, and unimpressed by names like Spaggiari. Albert steps out of the airport with nothing but a coat, a burner phone, and a drive full of ghosts. He's not here to sightsee. He's here to finish something his wife started and buried beneath layers of charm and spreadsheets. The address on the phone leads to a private bank on the Bonhoffstrasse. Nondescript, brutalist design, concrete and tinted glass, all the color of wet cement, Suite 3B. The hallway smells like money and printer ink. Albert knocks. No one answers, but the door clicks open on its own. Inside, it's warm, lived in, clean. On the table, tea still steaming. The British woman sits by the window. She doesn't look surprised. You came, she says. You left a very good trail. You followed it. He nods once. She gestures to the other chair. He sits. The silence. Between them is soft, not tense. Familiar now, like two spies who've spent too long in each other's dreams. The British woman finally speaks. You saw the protocol? Yes. So you know your wife was trying to erase the man who owned the first ledger? Yes. Do you know why? Albert leans back, waits. She continues. She wasn't trying to control the network. She was trying to kill it. Why? Because she saw what it could become and feared it. She pauses, takes a breath. Then the gent rebuilt it. Albert nods. With you. No, around me. A small but critical distinction. The British. Woman stands, walks to a safe, pulls out a thick binder. Old, worn, wrapped in elastic string. She sets it on the table. Everything. Names, transfers, codes. From Nice to the Balkans to DC. Albert doesn't touch it. Why me? Because everyone else is dead, she says. And because I don't want to lead. A strange confession. Then why protect it? She looks out the window. The wind whistles against the glass like a quiet warning. Because it's more than a network. It's an idea about how power moves without being seen. Your wife understood that. But she couldn't live in its shadow. She needed to own it. And me. The British woman turns to face him. You haven't made up your mind yet. And she's right. He hasn't, but he's close. Later that night, they walk along the Lamotte River, past couples laughing too loud and trams gliding by with silent efficiency. The water reflects a broken version of the city, ripples bending lights into something. Almost holy, Albert speaks. If I walk away, burn the ledger, vanish, what happens? She doesn't stop walking. Someone else picks it up. And if I keep it, you become what your wife feared. They stop at a small bridge. Banks and law firms line the railings. An old line reads, "History is a mouthful of teeth and forgetting." Albert asks her something simple. Is the gent alive? She doesn't lie. Yes. Where? Everywhere and nowhere. He's the system now. Watching, waiting. So why give me the kill switch? She doesn't answer, because she doesn't know. Or maybe she does and can't say it. He returns to the bank alone, sits across from the binder, still unopened. The fan in the corner hums like an old radio picking up dead stations. He opens the first page and begins reading. It's worse than he thought. Money trails that loop through disaster zones. Politicians listed as assets. Entire regions flagged not by name, but by resource. Cobalt, lithium, oil flow. The ledger isn't just a record. It's a manual, and nice. It was only the origin test. He closes the binder. Burner phone buzzes. No message, just an image, a silhouette in a chair, the gent, or a recording. Hard to say, text overlay. This isn't a threat, this is a mirror. He deletes it, stares at the wall, then opens a drawer beside the desk, takes out the flash drive labeled La Flambe Activate, stares at it, and wonders if he still has time to become something else. Not an heir, not a destroyer, just a witness, back in Nice. Jean-Pierre receives a package. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. A name scratched at the top. The British woman. And beneath it, a question. Would you follow her or bury her? Jean-Pierre folds the note and begins packing. Because Albert may be choosing his future, but the past always follows. Especially in cities like Nice, where the shadows keep perfect time. Rain follows Albert back to Nice. It arrives before his plane lands. Thin and slow, the kind that doesn't cleanse so much as accumulate. It pools and cracks along the runway, clings to the edges of car windows, seeps into coat linings. The city wears it like penance, As he steps off the plane, the sky is bruised. Airport staff shuffle through puddles without urgency. Nothing about the landing feels dramatic. But Albert knows better. He's not returning from a trip. He's re-entering orbit, and everyone's watching. By the time he arrives at his studio, his pager has buzzed 4 times. 3 different numbers, all unlisted, all leaving nothing. But the 4th, Jean-Pierre, you opened the binder. Albert doesn't reply, because he didn't just open the binder, he memorized it, and now it lives behind his eyes, twitching awake with every blink. The names, the transfers, the way power traveled in silence, mapped by currency and compromise. But what stays with him most is the way the documents spoke of people, not as humans, as assets, convertible, expendable, reactive, risk level, low. He remembers one file, dated 1968. His own father, the watchmaker, tagged only as collateral disclosure, a 7. No elaboration, just a line. His hand tightens around the doorknob, then relaxes. He pushes into the studio. The fan clicks lazily, still pretending to matter. He pours water from the tap, sits, opens the binder one last time, and rips out the page with his father's. Named dead later that day, he visits the family grave. Not for prayer, for quiet. Inside the cemetery, the air is dry, the kind of dry that cracks stone and makes voices sound smaller. He kneels, not because he's religious, but because some things require you to lower yourself in order to look them in the eye. He whispers, "I'm sorry." He doesn't specify what for, just sorry. Back in the city, a young courier is waiting, perched on a rusting Vespa, like he was born into the seat. When Albert approaches, the boy flicks his cigarette away and stands a little straighter. "You sent for me," the boy says. "I did." Albert holds out a small envelope. The kid takes it, confused. "What is it?" "A key," Albert replies. "To what?" "To the next part." He walks away before the kid can ask questions, because if the kid needs to ask, he's not ready yet. And if he doesn't, then the future might be okay. That evening, Albert meets the British woman at an abandoned greenhouse on the outskirts of the city. The glass panels are mostly shattered. The air is thick with mold and memory. Vines twist through the scaffolding like slow handwriting. She's already inside, hands tucked in her coat, expression unreadable. "You chose not to run," she says. "I chose not to repeat." She nods. They walk together between rows of dead plants. Albert speaks first. "I know about my father." She doesn't flinch, but she doesn't deny it. He was protected as long as the ledger stayed intact, and when it didn't, he was classified. He turns to face her. "You say the system is an idea, but you treat it like a machine." She says nothing, because it is a machine, and she knows it. Albert pulls out the flash drive, La Flambe. She tilts her head. "You brought it. I wanted to look you in the eye before I ended it." She steps forward. "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because deep down, you understand what happens next." "What?" he asks. She steps closer and says softly, "You let it breathe." That night, Albert doesn't sleep. He walks through alleys where dogs bark and old men play cards under flickering lights, past murals of saints and forgotten movie stars. He ends up on the rooftop. The drive still sits on the table. La Flambe, unplugged, untouched, but present. The British woman joins him just after midnight. No words. She just sits beside him, pulling her coat tighter. Albert breaks the silence. "There's no such thing as ending this. I know. So why offer me the switch? She looks at him, soft, tired, not vulnerable, raw, because I couldn't be the one to press it. Albert nods, then asks, was any of it real? She doesn't hesitate. Every part that hurt. The burner phone buzzes one last time. Unknown number, but Albert knows it's the gent. Just one line. The network doesn't care who rules it, only that someone does. He deletes the message, then takes the drive, walks inside, sits at his desk, inserts it. The screen lights up. Le Flambeau protocol, final activation, awaiting command. He places his hand on the mouse and waits, lets the silence stretch longer, until it stops feeling like absence and starts to feel like presence. The room fades behind his eyelids. He exhales, and finally, doesn't press anything. He removes the drive, tucks it away. Some power is safest when never used. Some legacies are loudest when whispered. Some photographers don't need to capture the moment, they just need rooms no one watches. In the final hours before dawn, Albert walks the shoreline. No guards, no briefcases, no threats. Just a man in a city that may never thank him, but will never forget him either. The ledger remains, unwritten, the network untouched, the silence intact. He breathes, and Nice breathes with him. At sunrise, Albert walks through the Cours Salier market like a man walking through a dream he once had as a boy. The streets are alive in that stubborn Riviera way. Vendors setting up, old women watering plants that don't need water, and children kicking a soccer ball against a centuries-old wall. The noise is comforting, predictable. But Albert's mind is somewhere else. He still carries the La Flambeau drive in his coat pocket. Not because he needs it today, but because he needs to remember what it could do, what it almost became. The British woman is already waiting at a small cafe. Not inside, at a table on the edge of the square. She sips an espresso, looking out at the city as if it were a chessboard, and she's just now realizing how long it's been playing itself. You didn't destroy it, she says as Albert approaches. I didn't use it either. Good, you're starting to understand the real game. Albert sits beside her. The cobblestones are warm from the early sun. I want to ask something. She nods. Why me? Not symbolically, I mean specifically. You could have chosen a dozen others. She doesn't answer right away. Instead, she reaches into her purse and pulls out an envelope. Inside, a photo. Albert, age 22, in a military uniform in Indochina, laughing, taken from a distance. Framed perfectly. I took that, she says. He looks at her, confused. That was before I ever met you, not before I saw you. She leans in. The gent had a list. Contingencies, possible inheritors. But I watched, I chose. Why? Because you were quiet, in a place that taught you to shout, that meant something. He folds the photo, keeps it, because that kind of answer deserves to be carried back in the city. The young courier rides through the old town, weaving between traffic like a ghost with errands. In his backpack, a sealed envelope from Jean-Pierre. Inside, a list 12 names, all local, all recent, all leaking. He parks his Vespa in a back alley and dials a number. Tell Spaggiari, he whispers, the dam's cracking. The next day, Albert meets with Jean-Pierre on a hilltop overlooking the city. They stand beneath an olive tree that's outlived. Everyone who ever swore revenge beneath it. You sent the boy, Jean-Pierre nods. He's quicker than you think, got good instincts, and the list, confirmed. Someone's bleeding intel to the Italians. Albert takes the list, scans it, then circles one name. A mid-tier customs official who was never important until now. I'll handle it. Jean-Pierre watches him closely. Handle or erase. Whatever keeps the city quiet. That night, Albert walks into a butcher shop in the Port District. No meat on display. Just a man behind the counter reading L'Equipe. Albert places the list on the counter. The man reads it, tears it in half, then slides over a small coin with an anchor etched into it. 2 days, the butcher says. No more. 2 days later, 6 people on the list leave town quietly. 1 dies in a boating accident off the coast of Corsica. Another disappears on the train to Geneva. No witnesses, no headlines, just balance. And balance in Nice is always. Temporarily, the British woman meets Albert on the rooftop again. This time she brings champagne. She pours 2 glasses. They drink in silence. Finally, she says, "You're ready for Zurich." "I've already been to Zurich." "No," she corrects, "you went to the city." "I'm talking about the program." He frowns. She continues. Le Flambeur was the network kill switch. Zurich was the birthplace of Override, the tool that lets someone rewrite the entire structure, not destroy it. The true succession mechanism. He doesn't speak. She sips her champagne. "Your wife found it, then buried it. Where else?" she says. In herself, a pause. And then Albert understands. Le Flambeur wasn't the final layer. It was the last visible one. Beneath it, something deeper. And the only key was locked inside the mind of a woman already dead. Unless someone copied it. That night, Albert returns home, opens his wife's study. For the first time in weeks, he pulls down a hollowed-out copy of a photo album. Inside, notes, not ledger entries, but questions. What makes power legitimate? When do we exchange obedience for permission? Who records the recorders? Philosophy, but written like instructions. And beneath the final page, a flashcard labeled Aix-en-Provence, Zurich code variant. He plugs it in, and the screen doesn't ask for a password. It simply says, "You're Albert. Continue." He clicks yes, and everything begins again at 4:03 a.m. Albert sits in the quietest place left in Nice, a server vault built beneath an old hotel, once wired for the city's casino security backbone, now abandoned and known only to 2 people. One is Albert, the other is missing, presumed vanished, and probably watching from somewhere colder. The terminal glows dimly in front of him. The flashcard labeled Override Zurich code variant has unlocked a program unlike anything he's seen. It doesn't look like an interface. It looks like a language. Not menus, not files. Just scripts, commands written like poetry. The screen scrolls with entries. Structured Geneva archive. Protocol Lumen Parties Orphic Operetta Vienna. His name appears only once, tagged to a fragment of a string labeled Redacted Inheritor, clean. He exhales, slowly. This is no ledger. This is the engine behind the ledger. It doesn't control power. It predicts it. Anticipates territory shifts. Maps financial destabilization patterns based on weather, ports, and art auction percentages. This is not a criminal tool. This is a sovereignty calculator. And his wife helped build it, then erased her part, then buried the key in Albert. He kills the screen, removes the flashcard, wipes the terminal, walks out before the city can notice him leaving. Some rooms don't echo until long after you've left. That afternoon, He meets the British woman beneath the overpass at the edge of the city. She's leaning against a mural of a forgotten actress. Sunglasses low, hair tucked behind her ears. He hands her the flashcard. Destroy it. She holds it like a matchbox. You sure? Yes. You just walked out of the deepest tunnel in this world, and you want to burn the map. No, Albert says. I want to make sure no one else follows it. She hesitates, then smiles. Faintly, Albert Spaggiari, the only man who was handed the knife and asked who we're protecting it from. She pockets the drive. He walks away. He doesn't look back. She doesn't stop him. Back in Nice, the young courier waits outside the butcher's shop, this time with an envelope he prepared. When Albert arrives, the kid stands unusually stiff. I made something, he says. Albert takes the envelope, opens it. Inside, a hand-drawn map of Nice with dots, tags, and coded routes. Your routes, the boy explains. From the courier cruise, the things you never see from above. Albert looks at the boy, eyebrows raised. This is good. It's real, the boy says. And for a moment, Albert sees it. What his wife never understood. Power isn't created by precision alone. Sometimes it's earned by belonging. He hands the map back. You're in. The boy beams. Meanwhile, in a compound near Geneva, a man watches a grainy feed of Albert handing the British woman the flashcard. He turns to his assistant. Prepare the fallback. What level? Level gent. The assistant swallows hard. Sir, that activates everyone. I know. That night, the British woman texts Albert. You've made your choice. But there's still one more ledger. He doesn't respond, because some choices aren't answers. They're silences that echo long enough to be understood. Morning fog creeps through Nice like an old debt. Slow, persistent, hard to ignore. It wraps the buildings in softness, takes the edge off the traffic noise, and muffles footsteps like the city is trying to sneak up on itself. Albert watches from the rooftop. The fan in the window is still, just for once. Below, the young courier is already moving. Vespa whining softly down side streets, envelope in backpack, face focused in that too young way. Albert had told him nothing, just handed him the key to a small storage room off the promenade. Inside, a crate, unmarked, untouched. He gave no explanation because the boy didn't ask. That mattered more than loyalty. The crate holds documents. Not from Le Flambeur, from something older, typed on parchment thick paper with military headings. French dates from 1958, 1959, 1960, redacted passages, names missing, but locations listed in clear type. Algiers, Saigon, Paris, Marseille. Each tagged contingency, A.S. Albert Spaggiari, donor of what? The boy takes a photo, sends it up the chain. By noon, Albert receives the picture. He's sitting in the back room of the same church where his wife once brokered a deal with a rogue. Intelligence officer. He studies the document. Donor site Indochine. Site Indochine was rumored for years among the lowest tier operatives. A place where the French government sent things to never be asked about again. Not death, not exile, erasure. The rumor was that Site Indochine wasn't a place. It was a vault. One built under a military hospital. Not French, American. That afternoon, Albert makes a call. An old contact, a man named Caesar, who hasn't touched Nice in over a decade, but still has cousins in the police force and a grudge against colonial history. When Caesar picks up, he doesn't say hello. He says, "You've found sight Indochine, haven't you?" Albert doesn't reply. He doesn't need to. Caesar breathes into the phone, then says, "You go near that place, Albert. You're not walking into a room. You're walking into a loop. A story someone keeps trying to forget." Albert replies with one sentence, "I'm already in it." The British woman meets him in person the next morning. No warning. She's in his studio kitchen, sitting at the counter, peeling an apple like it's a quiet weapon. "You opened the crate." "Yes, you're going to cite Indochine." "I am." She doesn't argue. She hands him a flash drive. "This gets you through the first gate. What about the second?" She leans in. "Just say my name." A pause, and hers. By nightfall, Albert's in Marseille, standing outside what used to be a French military logistics hub. Now, it's a private shipping company. Sterile, overstaffed, full of people trained not to see things. He walks through the lobby wearing a dockworker's uniform and a name tag that says Emil. No one stops him. Elevator to sub-level 3. Swipe card. No reaction. He inserts her drive into a maintenance panel. The lights blink twice, then go out. Emergency power kicks in, and the elevator descends. Sub-level 5 is colder, not temperature-wise, memory-wise. A long hallway, fluorescent lights flickering in sequence. At the end, a vault door. He walks. Each step feels like it echoes inside someone else's skull. He stops at the door. There's no keypad, just a panel with a microphone. He leans forward. K and Albertine. Nothing, then a hiss. The vault door slides open. Inside, darkness. And a voice, soft male, his own. "Albert, you were never meant to find this." The lights blink on. The room is lined with photographs. His face at every age. Reading, walking, laughing, crying. Dozens of moments no one else should have seen. On the far wall, a terminal. One file open, labeled Inheritance True. He doesn't touch it. Not yet, because something's changed. The program doesn't ask for confirmation. It recognizes him. "Welcome back," the screen says, which means he's already been here, or his wife built the system using his identity. The realization crawls over his skin. He sits and waits, because he knows what's next isn't a command, it's a question, and he finally understands. He isn't here to answer it, he's here to write it. The screen glows with a slow pulse, like a heart that's been asleep too long and is unsure if it wants to wake. Albert leans forward. The terminal asks for nothing. No password, no biometric scan. The system already knows who he is. That's what unnerves him most. He scrolls. The interface is custom, old but elegant. No folders, just nodes. Each one labeled Nice, Monaco, Zurich, Marseille. But only one node pulses. Inheritance True. He clicks. A subfolder opens. 3 files. 1. Albert Override. 2. AS. Principles. 3. Final Operator. He clicks the second file first. AS. Principles. A document opens. Text, sparse and clear. His wife's voice in every sentence. "Power does not require your love. It requires your restraint." A clean legacy. Leaves no fanfare, only calm. You are not above the ledger. You are its footnote. Each line slices through Albert with surgical clarity. This wasn't a manifesto. It was a manual. And it wasn't written for Albert. It was written about him. Clicks the first file next. Albert Override. A single paragraph. If he survives Monaco, if he rejects the ledger and does not seek the vault, then grant him access to rewrite a protocol. He is not the heir, he is the reset. The cursor blinks at the end, like it's daring him to argue. He leans back, eyes on the ceiling of the vault. If what he's reading is true, his wife hadn't prepared him to inherit power. She'd prepared him to end it. Not destroy it, not abandon it, but overwrite it. Quietly, without war, without fire. Like a raising pencil. Lead with a steady thumb. He clicks the final file. Final operator. It opens a video, black and white, grainy. His wife, seated in this very room, older, not long before she disappeared, looking directly into the camera. If you're here, Albert, then I failed. A pause, a long one, then. But maybe that's exactly what I needed to do. She smiles, wry, familiar. The system will always survive its operator, unless the operator rewrites the need for the system itself. Another pause. You are not my echo, you are my correction. The video ends, the terminal goes dark, and Albert, for once, feels something unfamiliar. Not power, not vengeance, just permission. Hours later, Albert stands above ground again, outside the shipping compound. Sunrise paints the Marseille sky like spilled wine. The British woman is waiting by a rental car. She holds no phone. She doesn't smile, just nods. You found it. She says, yes, you rewrote it. No. Pause. She nods again, accepting will you. Albert answers, not until I understand what comes after. Then you're already different. Back in Nice, the young courier distributes new envelopes to his crew. No names, no logos, just numbers. Each one holds a portion of a new map Albert is building. Not of territories, of trust. And trust in this city is more dangerous than turf. It lasts longer and costs more when it breaks. Albert meets Jean-Pierre one final time. They sit in a quiet cafe near the port, the kind with white lace curtains and coffee served with a knowing glance. I know what my wife built, Albert says. Jean-Pierre sips his coffee. I know what she feared. Albert continues. Jean-Pierre places a folded note on the table. I kept this, he says. From the day she left, Albert opens it. For words, end it. But gently, no signature, no explanation. Just that a breath leaves Albert's chest like steam. Jean-Pierre asks, what happens now? Albert stares out the window. Children pass with balloons. A priest jogs with a florist. Life continues. Now, Albert says, nothing. Jean-Pierre blinks. Nothing. Albert nods. We let it sleep, and for the first time since the city whispered his name, he means it. Nice holds its breath for a week. No fires, no disappearances, no bodies found in alleys named after saints. The newspapers shift back to covering traffic fatalities and local football. Even the gossip slows. It's not peace, it's balance. A rare, fragile kind. And it's terrifying, because everyone who's been in this long enough knows, when the city gets this quiet, it means something heavy is being lifted, or something heavier is about to fall. Albert watches the quiet like a photographer watches a developing print, carefully, expectantly, not entirely trusting it. He spends his mornings walking the grid. No driver, no security, no fanfare, just sneakers on pavement, a coat zipped up against the mistrust of his own name. He checks in on the butcher, the kid running numbers from the phone shop, a widow in the old town whose husband once carried his wife's briefcases and never opened them. He's not asking for loyalty. He's checking for stillness. So far, it holds. The British woman has left nice. No goodbye. Just a small note taped to the inside of his darkroom door. You did what I couldn't. That's what made it real. She leaves behind a burner phone with one number saved in it, labeled simply if. He hasn't called it, but he hasn't thrown it away either. That tells him everything. The young courier's network is growing, not with soldiers, with runners, couriers, observers, smart kids with Vespers and unassuming roots, kids who know the city better than the police ever could. They don't carry weapons, they carry messages, real ones, handwritten, burned after reading. He meets them in a retired fishing boat in the harbour. They call it the New Parliament. They joke, but only halfway. One evening, Albert finds a package at his studio door, wrapped in brown paper. Inside, a cassette tape and a photo. The photo is recent. The gent, alive, sitting in a garden somewhere warm. A newspaper beside him, date circled, today. The note taped to the photo says, "The ledger sleeps, but the architect never does." The tape, unlabeled. He finds a cassette player in a box of old equipment, presses play. The gent's voice, thinner now, older. "You didn't press the button. Good. But you didn't destroy it either. Better." He continues. "You rewrote nothing, but you walked differently. And that's what changes the shape of walls." A long pause. Then, "Do you want to know what happens next?" Click, end of tape. That night, Albert doesn't sleep. Not because he's afraid, because he's curious. At dawn, he walks to the waterfront. No entourage, no burner. Just a folded map in his pocket and the memory of a voice that keeps echoing in strange corners. He watches the sun rise over the harbour. A fishing boat pulls in. No one waves, but someone watches him. Always. He lights a cigarette he doesn't plan to smoke, lets it burn down in his fingers, tosses it, and then, just once, whispers to the sea, "Not yet." Because some endings require patience. And this city, this network, this web of ledger ghosts and whispered names, deserves more than fire or silence. It deserves pause, a deep one. The kind you take before speaking a word that might never be. Undone, in the distance, a child tosses breadcrumbs into the water. The seagulls come slowly, cautiously, then all at once. Like trust. Spring rolls in without permission. It doesn't knock, doesn't announce itself. It just unfolds across nice like a slow grin, the kind that rises in corners and reaches the eyes last. The rain stops, the mimosa trees bloom again, and the shadows, they don't disappear. They simply take on new shapes. Albert wakes to the sound of mopeds and morning radio. He doesn't check his phone, doesn't need to, because these days, no message is the message. And quiet means the machine is still working, or sleeping. He eats breakfast on the balcony. Coffee, a stale croissant, a soft-boiled egg cracked gently against ceramic. He eats like someone who doesn't plan to leave today, but his mind is already walking elsewhere. The map the British woman left behind, the real one, the one not made of paper, wasn't a list of places. It was a network of choices, and each dot she marked was a point where someone before him had chosen: kill or trust, vanish or appear, press or hold. He traces those dots with his fingers. Now they've become habit, markers of when a legacy split, and he knows that somewhere soon a new dot will be made, with his name beneath it. He just doesn't know where. Not yet. In the courtyard below, the young courier trains 2 new runners. One's a girl, no older than 13. The other's a boy with a limp that makes him faster. Not slower, because he knows where to cheat the route. Albert watches from above. They don't look up. He prefers it that way. Later that day, Jean-Pierre shows up unannounced. No knock, just a heavy breath from behind the studio screen. "You've got company," he says. Albert turns. Trouble? No. Something older. That's not what Albert wants to hear, but it's what he expected. The company is a woman in her 70s. Sharp eyes, no makeup, no name offered. She sits in Albert's kitchen like she used to own it. And maybe she did in another version of the city. She hands him a small wooden box. Inside a brooch, gold, shaped like a watch gear. He recognizes it immediately. It belonged to his mother-in-law. The old woman speaks. He gave this to her when they married, when he swore he'd never build what he built. Who are you? Someone. Who watched it happen? Who warned him? Who warned your wife? Albert closes the box. What do you want? Nothing, she says. I just came to return what never should have been taken. Then she leaves. No further words, just silence trailing behind her like perfume. He holds the brooch for a long time, not like an heirloom, like an apology, because he knows now what began before him doesn't have to end with him, but it can be set down gently, like memory. That night, he walks the city alone. He passes a street musician playing a melody no one's paid for. A fruit vendor closing late, humming a song his father-in-law once whistled through gritted teeth. A police officer lighting a cigarette near a corner Albert used to avoid. And none of them look at him. They let him pass. That's the real currency now. Not fear, not reverence, permission. On the way home, he pauses at a shuttered storefront. The sign above it cracked, the window taped, but the smell of old ink and copper wiring still lingers. This used to be the signal room, the place the first messages came from. He closes his eyes and listens, but the wires don't hum anymore. That silence, it belongs to him now, and he has no intention of waking it. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Nice exhales in long, lazy pulses. It's not peace, exactly, but it's something that hums in the bones. A rhythm that says, we survived another season. Let's not ask how. Albert sits on a bench near Place Garibaldi, where the old statues still lie half covered in bougainvillea. Tourists lean in. Locals walk past without glancing. Time folds here. Roman stones beneath cafe tables. He watches the flow. No guards, no shadows tracking him. Just one man in a worn coat, invisible. By design, he's waiting for a signal. But the signal doesn't come. And maybe that's the point. Across town, the young courier delivers his final envelope for the day. No words inside. Just a matchstick and a dried flower pressed between paper. The recipient, a former operative for the old network, nods once, and burns the envelope before Albert even hears of it. Whatever message that was, it's done. Albert returns home to find a memory sitting in his studio. Not a person, a suitcase, leather, worn, French make. It used to be his wife's. Inside, everything's been rearranged. Files, a Polaroid of Albert as a young man, an old contact book with certain names scratched out and others underlined. At the bottom, a passport, Swiss, issued under a name Albert doesn't recognize, but with his photo. The British woman's work, no doubt. and tucked in the lining. A second SIM card, blank, global, activated. A whisper in tech form. If it restarts, be ready. He zips it back, places it in the closet, doesn't touch it again. For now. Later, Jean-Pierre visits again. This time he doesn't come through the front door. He's waiting on the balcony, like someone who belongs there. He has a newspaper folded under his arm. Page 6, he says. Albert takes it, reads. A banker in Geneva found dead. Apparent heart attack. But Albert recognizes the name. One of the original signers. A man who'd once helped his wife launder money through fake art auctions. Coincidence? Albert asks. Jean-Pierre just shrugs. Coincidence doesn't book first-class travel and pay for dinner with bearer bonds. Albert sets the paper down, so it's starting again. No, Jean-Pierre says quietly. It never stopped. At midnight, Albert walks alone to the old train yard. It's been decommissioned for years. No trains, just the ghosts of arrivals that never finished boarding. There he finds a man waiting. Middle-aged, crisp suit, eyes like glass left in a freezer. He speaks first. We had hoped you'd activate. I didn't. You chose not to. That's different. Albert tilts his head. I suppose you're here to convince me otherwise. No. The man says, I'm here to offer a deal. He hands Albert a card, black. No numbers, no name, just a date. October 12th, and a word, vendetta. Albert flips it over, blank. The man walks off, disappears between shadows and old rail cars. At home, Albert burns the card, not because he's refusing, because sometimes refusal needs to be seen. Even when you're still thinking, even when a part of you wonders what waits by that lake in October. The next morning, he calls the British woman. She doesn't answer, but a text arrives 30 minutes later. I saw the obituary. Good, stay quiet. And below that, the boy is ready. Don't waste him, he smiles. She always knew how to wrap a thread in a compliment. Days pass, slow, like syrup over marble. Albert keeps moving. Never far, never in straight lines. He lets people see him in churches, on trams, on balconies with books. He lets the city forget what it feared, because the real victory isn't the silence. It's what you choose to protect with it. The city no longer flinches when it hears his name. That, Albert thinks, is either a gift or a warning, because nice is not a place where names fade naturally. They're passed down, etched into walls, whispered in courtyards and courtrooms alike. To vanish from that echo means one of two things. You died, or you learned to walk so softly that even the walls forgot. Albert walks softly now. Every choice is measured, every step paced. He's not hiding. He's studying the silence, keeping it upright like an artifact balanced on a wire. The young courier brings him a notebook one morning. Graph paper, pencil lines, coffee stains on. The corner, inside, a float chart. It's not of territories. It's of trust fractures. Every neighborhood marked not by its muscle, but by its hesitations. Places where messages got delayed. Places where couriers stopped too long. Where widows asked questions. Where policemen looked the other way too icily. Albert flips through it slowly. The boy stands by, nervous. This is good, Albert finally says. Then, without looking up, you're not my errand boy anymore. The boy freezes. You're building something. I just hadn't admitted it. The boy says nothing, but Albert sees the flicker in his shoulders. That quick, quiet joy only someone from the back streets knows how to bury. Elsewhere, a courier stumbles. Not physically, he slips up in discretion. Mentions a drop location too loud at a backroom bar in the port. 2 days later, the drop is raided. No arrests, just missing. Albert gets the call at 3 a.m. He doesn't react, just folds the message into his coat and steps out into the night. In the alley behind the bar, he finds an old contact waiting, a jazz musician who used to code smuggling routes into sheet music. The man lights a cigarette. They're watching the North again. Who? Hard to say, but it ain't us. Albert nods. Time to move the lines. At sunrise, he convenes the runners. Not in a bunker, not in a villa. On the rooftop of an abandoned hotel. The skyline open, the wind sharp. He lays the map down, points to the northern grid. We pull it in, he says. Consolidate, one heartbeat, no noise. A girl with short hair raises a hand. What if they're baiting us? What if pulling in makes us obvious? Albert smiles. I'm counting on it. That night, 2 dummy drops are staged. One in Monaco, one near the Italian border. Empty boxes, fake seals. 2 men follow them. Both disappear, not killed, just disoriented, stranded in neighborhoods where no one answers the door, where every window holds a curtain half lifted. Leave the Riviera by morning, and the message spreads. It's not asleep, it's watching. Back at his studio, Albert finds another note. No envelope, just 3 words scrolled in blue pen. Your bleeding legacy. It's unsigned, but the handwriting is unmistakably the gent's. It's not a threat, it's a compliment. He tears it in half and throws it into the sea. Because he knows he is bleeding legacy, but not like a wound, like a purge. He walks home through narrow alleys, past old statues, past a boy who looks just like he once did. Wide-eyed, gripping the handlebars of a bicycle too big for him, daring the slope like it owes him something. And Albert smiles, because maybe that's the next ledger. Not a throne, not a script, just a kid who learns how to stand upright in a city that doesn't want him to, and learns it without needing a name like Spaggiari to do it. Rain returns. Too nice without ceremony, not a storm, just that slow, curtain-like kind that weights the cobblestones and makes the city whisper in softer tones. Rooftops glisten, shutters creak, and the pigeons, always too bold, retreat for once to drier corners. Albert doesn't carry an umbrella. He walks through it like someone accustomed to discomfort, or maybe like someone who's decided the rain is his equal. This morning, he's headed not to a meeting, not to a drop, but to an archive. The municipal one, where memories go to get categorized or forgotten. Inside, it still smells like old paper and damp brick. He shows no ID. The attendant recognizes him, doesn't blink, just leads him to the microfilm room. Box 3427, labeled Spaggiari, Albertine, Civil Inquiries. 1962 to 1971. Most of it is redacted, but tucked between form letters and bureaucratic dust is something curious. A university petition, 6 pages long, signed by professors, asking to remove a young woman named Albertine from a political science program due to unpredictable associations and influence of foreign entities. Dated 1965. She was 2-1. He runs his fingers down the page. One name he remembers, Jean-Luc, her professor. He'd once told her, "You look like someone who chews problems, not theories." He hadn't known what it meant. Now Albert does. He photocopies nothing, just folds the memory into his jacket and walks back out into the rain. That evening, the young courier calls. Someone tagged the Spaggiari name on a wall in red paint, not in hate, in tribute. Underneath, a phrase, "The silent lineage lives." It's stylized, fresh, and it's dangerous, because it hints at revival, at myth. And Albert doesn't want a myth. He wants a quiet city. So he calls in an old favor, a street artist named Lena, who once painted over gang symbols in exchange for protection no one admitted to. He meets her at 2 a.m., hands her a fresh can of grey paint. She asks no questions, just nods, smiles, and says, "They always come." Back, the trick is making sure the walls don't let them stick. 3 nights later, a package arrives. No return address. Inside, an original ledger page. French intelligence, transactions from 1968. Clear handwriting. One entry highlighted, investment. Safe house, construction, SR Vienna. Amount to MCHF, initial AS. SAR, site R again. The vault wasn't just a secret, it was an export. And now, someone wants Albert to know it's not dormant. He burns. The page in his sink calls no one, just marks a dot on a new version of his map, right over Vienna. The British woman sends a voice note the next morning. No greeting, just, "I saw the ledger entry." A pause. Then, Vienna is not viable. Too many players. Stay local, stay out. He doesn't reply, but she knows what silence from him means. It's not agreement, it's movement. Later that week, Albert visits a friend who teaches history at the university. They talk about Roman aqueducts, the Corsican mafia's place in post-war film, and the difference between a syndicate and a state. The professor says something that sticks. When history is too quiet, it means someone is editing the footnotes. Albert walks home, with those words humming under his coat, because that's exactly what he's been doing. Not erasing the story, just choosing which parts stay legible. At night, he dreams of old tunnels and locked rooms, of men with no faces passing envelopes made of smoke, and always, always someone whispering, "Will you rewrite it, or will you repeat it?" He never answers, because the answer changes each time. The morning arrives, not with clarity, but with fog. Nice shrouded in silver, buildings softened, details blurred. It's the kind of day where people speak more quietly, as if afraid the mist might overhear. Albert likes days like this. They make decisions easier. He stands by the window with a cup of bitter espresso, eyes scanning a city he no longer rules, no longer avoids, but simply inhabits. The legacy hasn't disappeared, but it no longer drips from every brick or rides shotgun with every breath. It lingers, like the scent of perfume on an old suit you've stopped wearing. Still there, but no longer you. Today is a day of closures. The young courier is out early, sealing off the final routes, not with locks, with trust transfers. Each former operative is given the choice, stay or fade. Most fade. That's what Albert hoped for, because a quiet system isn't one that survives forever. It's one that dissolves with grace. He visits Jean-Pierre one last time. The old brass droid is preparing to move north, away from the city, to a vineyard someone else will tend. He says he's tired of secrets with zip codes. They sit on the balcony, sharing a bottle of wine too old for its label and a silence too comfortable for explanation. Jean-Pierre raises a glass. To the ledger, Albert raises his. To its sleep, they clink. No further words. They've said enough across too many years. That afternoon, Albert walks alone along the promenade. No disguise. Just a man in a jacket, carrying no signal, no protection. He pauses at a shop window. A camera on display. Old, a Leica, keys slightly worn. He steps inside. The shopkeeper doesn't recognize him, just smiles politely as Albert pays in cash and asks for it to be wrapped. Back home, he places the camera on a small desk by the window, loads a roll of film, and just stares. The city hums below. Children shout. A bus stalls. The espresso machine down the block hisses its usual sigh. Everything normal, everything earned. He takes a picture of the empty street, then pauses, rewinds the film, then again. He removes the roll entirely, decides he'll take the picture later, because sometimes the best stories aren't for capturing, they're for living quietly, until they no longer need to be remembered. That night, he lights a single candle in his studio. No fan, no noise, just the soft, steady beat of a heart that no longer belongs to the ledger. It belongs to him, and to the stillness he chose, and chooses again every day, because walking away isn't weakness. It's power rewired. It's fear folded. It's love in a city that never learnt to say the word, but still found ways to show it. And in that candlelight, in that hum, Albert Spaggiari becomes what his wife never could. The quiet man the city doesn't need to fear, only to remember once in a while with a smile and a sigh, and then to sleep. So, wherever you're listening from, be it a dark room in Ohio, a rainy window in Dublin, or a quiet side street in Bangkok, let yourself ease into the hush Albert built. Close your eyes, let the noise of nice fade into the soft steps of a man who chose something radical in a world of weapons and whispers. Restraint. Imagine the candlelight flickering on that desk, the camera untouched, the air still as the sea before a storm that never comes. Picture the man who once carried a plan like a curse, setting it down like a coat too heavy for the sun that finally broke through the clouds. The city breathes around him, not holding its breath anymore, just existing, gentle, calm, like you, right now. Maybe you've got headphones in, or maybe your room's gone quiet. Maybe your breathing has slowed. Maybe, just maybe, you forgot for a moment why today was heavy. That's the gift of stories like this. They give you someone else's ghosts to walk with, so yours can take the night off. So let your worries drift like that fog over the Riviera. Let your muscles loosen, your eyelids lower. There's nothing left to chase tonight, only stillness, only breath, only you held softly in the quiet that follows a story done right. Sleep well, dream softer. I'll see you in the next one.